Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience.
John hadn't slept a wink all night. To be more precise, he was in a hurry to get to the nearest village on his huge truck. Next to him, Tom, his replacement, sniffles peacefully. "Tom, wake up. We're in a crowded place. We need breakfast. Then you can drive," said John. Tom opened his eyes with difficulty and looked around leisurely. "I suggest that we rest in this place at least until lunchtime. We need to regain our strength. After dinner, we'll move on, and then we'll take the open road at night," said Tom. The two companions did not argue with each other. They got out of the truck and went to a roadside cafe. The customers of this cafe are mostly truckers. As soon as they sat down at the table, a middle-aged woman with disheveled hair and a puffy face approached them. She seemed to have recently woken up and clearly hadn't had a good night's sleep. "Hi, Leslie. How are you?" John asked. Leslie was clearly not happy to have such an early visitor. "How are you? I haven't given birth yet, but I'm not dead yet," she mumbled. "And our water was turned off last night, but it's back on now. So any order you want will have to wait for an hour or so." "Just don't rush me," Leslie said and tossed the shabby menu on the table. "We're in no hurry, Leslie. We can even take a nap here. We'll eat what you make first." Leslie didn't mind and slowly made her way to the kitchen to start cooking for her regular customers. Leslie was a kind woman, but she was rude. She didn't like to be rushed, but she appreciates it when customers show her simple human understanding for her work in such difficult conditions. The cafe is located at a considerable distance from all the benefits of civilization. The fact that the right products are procured on time and fresh food is served is a huge challenge for the area. She decided to show her gratitude for the understanding with a concrete action. 5 minutes later, Leslie brought 2 large glasses of hot coffee from bags. John and Tom were lucky that she'd saved 2 croissants yesterday, which came in handy. "Here, while you're soaking the worm with coffee and croissants, the hot one will be ready soon," said Leslie with a completely different, more friendly tone. "Well, Leslie, you're not a woman, but a gift. If you only knew how convenient it all was," Tom was glad. While they were enjoying the hot coffee and stale croissants, they heard the ringing of the bell that hung over the front door of the cafe. Not many people in these parts this early in the day. Besides, John is looking at the surrounding area through the glass front of the building, and there is no other vehicle visible except for their truck. But right now, 2 mysterious ladies appeared in front of them. Despite the fierce wind, the ladies are dressed lightly. Both are wearing ultra-mini skirts that barely reach the bottom of their slender buttocks. The high stilettos look very spectacular, but it must not be very comfortable to walk in them in such unpaved terrain. Despite the harsh atmosphere, the ladies looked quite festive. No sooner had John gotten a glimpse of all this beauty, the 2 ladies headed straight for them. They did not wait for a special invitation and immediately sat down next to the guests. "Hello, boys. What, we miss you?" asked the one who sat next to Tom. The ladies are acting very relaxed, as if they have known these men for a long time. "Hi, of course we miss you. What's your name, cutie?" Tom recognized the guest immediately and eagerly joined in the conversation. "Elizabeth, and what's yours?" The girl extended her hand, not taking her eyes off Tom's swollen face. "And I'm Angela," introduced herself to the second girl, who sat next to John and still kept to herself. After a brief acquaintance, the conversation was going very well. "So how long are you going to chew your croissants? Or shall we go and do something more interesting?" Elizabeth went on the offensive. "Come on, John, don't you think it's a good idea? While Leslie cooks something for us, we'll go out with the girls, then we'll return to the meal as a team, eh?" Tom said, his eyes lit up at the near prospect of being in the arms of the beautiful Elizabeth. John felt tired, so he didn't really engage in the conversation. Angela was also acting a little distant. Well, a date is a date. "Girls, where's your nickel? Or are you working right in the arms of nature? There's a motel that just opened up 5 minutes from here. I said we go there. It's all set up for total relaxation," Elizabeth said. Then the 4 of them walked along the big highway to the nearest motel. The motel turned out to be a small old house on the side of the big highway. A middle-aged woman with a very brightly painted face greeted them in the yard. She did not ask any questions, but just silently let the guests around her establishment. However, the choice is small, only 4 rooms with double beds in each of them, but all of them are free. John and Tom paid the amount of money and went to different rooms with their new friends for an hour. Entering their room, John wrinkled his nose at the unpleasant smell. Apparently, a lot of alcohol had been consumed and a lot of cigarettes smoked in here before them. An acrid odor permeated the entire interior. But John liked the fact that it was quite warm, unlike Leslie's cafe. John looked around, then took off his shoes and plopped into the double bed. His young friend Angela was clearly not feeling very enthusiastic about his company. But like an obedient slave, she began to remove her outer garments and folded them neatly on the edge of the couch. When she was left in her beautiful underwear, John looked at her and shuddered as if he had been electrocuted. He jumped off the bed and walked quickly over to her. Then he turned her torso toward the window and stared at her Angela's neck. His gaze caught her pendant. "What's wrong? Is something wrong?" Angela asked. At that moment, she wondered if she should call security right now or find out about the strange behavior of her client. She had a history of customers trying to take away her valuables. This pendant was gold. Angela was being cautious. "Where did you get that pendant?" John asked. "I bought it at the jewelry store. Where else could it be from?" answered Angela. "Are you sure you bought it at the jewelry store? You're asking strange questions." John took another look at the pendant. The chain was exactly the same. Even the pendant on the chain was a rhombus with an emerald inlay. John stepped away from the girl and sat down on the edge of the couch. He felt goosebumps running through his body. His breathing became labored, and now he felt a strong shiver in his body. "Are you okay?" Angela asked. John didn't bother to answer as he was now deep in his memories. Angela approached him from behind and began to lightly massage his back. "I think you look very tired. I'm going to help you relax now." John sharply jerked her hands away and said, "What's your real name?" "I'm telling you, Angela, you're kind of weird in general. You can tell me the truth. I've been cruising this highway for 20 years, and I see girls like you at least 3 times a month. I know Angela is your working name. I would like to know your real name." The girl sighed and reached on the couch for her dress. "Yes, that's right. You better get dressed," John said and looked away. Angela leisurely put on her short dress with shiny ruffles. Then she took a cigarette out of her purse, lit it, and sat down in a chair in the corner of the room. "So you filmed me just to talk? I don't mind, and it happens," she said. "Your pendant reminded me of something important. Exactly 9 years ago, I bought the exact same one to give my favorite and only daughter for her birthday. She picked it out herself. She wore it around her neck all the time. And when it came time to bury her, we decided to leave her favorite piece of jewelry around her neck as a memento from her parents." "How old was she when she was buried?" 19. If she were alive now, she'd be 24. Probably married by now, or introducing you to her boyfriend. You'd be nervous about finding her boyfriend's faults. Then you'd agree to marry her off. Then she would have made you happy with grandchildren, holiday visits, congratulations and gifts on every occasion. But none of that was meant to be. Is that why you're grieving now?" Angela said, trying to sound like an understanding person. "Yes, that too. What is the reason your daughter died at such a young age?" "She was murdered by the bastards. They killed my princess," said John bitterly. "Were they punished?" "I think so. 2 of them are in jail. One of them got away with it somehow. You don't have a daughter, and I don't have parents. You see how things work out in life." "What about your parents?" "I don't remember my father. He died too young. I remember my mother well. I was 9 years old then. She was sick. There was no one around to help her fight for life. I was a child. I couldn't do anything. A few months passed. She gave in to the disease and quietly left this world." "How long have you been on the highway?" "Seems like forever. But I don't count time." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Time means something to look forward to, right? I don't expect anything to happen. I feel like I'll work here all my life, standing along the highway during the day and entertaining different men every night. If you've set your mind to it, that's the way it'll be. If you try for a different life, at least you'll know you tried. Even if you fail, your conscience will be clear," said John fervently. "In all the time I've been working, do you know how many moralists like you I've listened to? If not hundreds, and certainly dozens. In fact, they're all lying. If they really thought what I do was obscene, they wouldn't come to us. And coming to us, doing your thing, and then acting like a moralist is just so much fun, Angela said. I do think it's indecent. Here you are sitting in front of me, and I don't even think about using your body. Yes, I used to be young, not without sin. But since my daughter died, my views have changed in a completely different direction. What can I say? Pull yourself together, try to live for today. Let your daughter rest in peace. You have to accept that truth, because you're a strong adult. If I was able to come to terms with my mother's death when I was 9 years old, you'll be able to, Angela said in a calm voice. You know what, why don't you quit all this mess and try to get your life back on track? I'm willing to help with that, said John. Don't make my shoes laugh. You all promised that, but where's the guarantee that you won't turn me into another pimp? Asked Angela. Don't just say no right away, but think very carefully. We'll be here before lunch. If you make a decision, everything will go smoothly. I'll take you away from here. No one will get you later, said John. Thank you, but I don't think your normal life has anything good in store for me. If I want to go there, I'll let you know first thing. My time is up, I'll go, said Angela. Then she picked up her things and left the room. John walked alone back to Leslie's cafe and waited for Tom. Judging by the sounds through the wall, Tom had had a good time. Now, of course, it would take him a while to pull himself together and get up. Tom came in cuddling with his Elizabeth when Leslie was already serving the hot pot. John, are you bored alone? Where's your fairy? Asked a cheerful Tom. I let her go. John answered briefly and did not explain the details in front of Elizabeth. Their conversation continued outside after Tom had said a fervent goodbye to his Elizabeth. I need to go to that motel again and meet Angela. I want to take her with me, John said. Minkles, John, Minkles. Don't forget you're married. Why, she's hot, isn't she? Tom asked in a whisper. What do you want? If they see me now, they'll punish me later, she said in a whisper. If you're going to leave, come out. I'll get you out of here. Leave right now, or I'm calling security. These guys won't be nice to you, and they won't be nice to me either, Angela said in a whisper. No matter how much John tried to convince her, Angela wouldn't agree to leave here. When he realized that it was useless to convince her, he continued on his way with bitterness in his heart. They drove in silence for a long time. Tom realized that John was experiencing very difficult feelings, so he decided to give his friend a chance to speak. John, I was working in another country at the time, so I don't know the details. And then it was awkward to ask, because I didn't want to stir your heart. What really happened to your daughter? Tom asked. She was murdered. By who? How did it happen? Since we have a long drive, I'll tell you. John said and began his story. When I was young, I didn't want to start a family for a long time. I thought it was a burden. I dated all kinds of girls and enjoyed the free life. Then I met Emma, my wife. She was one of the girls I chose for temporary entertainment. But I soon discovered that she was seriously in love with me. That alarmed me. I tried to keep her away from me, but the more I tried, the closer she got to me. And then suddenly she announced that she was pregnant. This news upset me because I didn't see Emma as my spouse, and I still didn't intend to start a family in general. But I had to get married. Family life had become a real cage for me. I still had my heart set on having fun, and Emma's belly was getting bigger by the day. She tried to keep me busy and worked herself to the bone. I vaguely remember that she had several threats of miscarriage. She ran alone through the hospital and went to the hospital for preservation. Days like that felt like a breath of fresh air to me. I was always of the mindset that if she left me, I would let her go with a light heart and never bother her. How foolish I was then. As Emma's due date approached, I purposely took a long-haul flight because the prospect of becoming a father didn't make me happy. I knew that having a baby would make my cage even tighter. When I returned from the long haul, I was shown a small pink-colored package at home. My wife told me we had a daughter and she was named Jeannie. Out of the pink wrapper, barely open little eyes and a wrinkled face looked up at me. I didn't want to hold her in my arms. As if my wife had anticipated this reaction, she took her daughter back and never offered to hold her again until I started reaching for her myself. But it was a long time later. Jenny cried at night. I wanted to sleep. It annoyed me how my wife would fall sound asleep and not hear the baby's cries. On days like that, I would make up any excuse not to spend the night at home. After a while, I found that Emma and I had become complete strangers, although our relationship had not been particularly warm before. I was in despair. Before the birth of the child, I still had hope to love this woman. but after the appearance of a daughter became unbearable in the family. One day my wife came to me and asked me why I was so indifferent to my daughter. I didn't want to rake up the past and tell the truth. And what was the point? To get her off my back, I blurted out that if I had a kid, it would be different. But here is a girl, with her do not play, on soccer, she will not take with you, and a little older will leave in another family, as if all your care and was not at all. That was my greatest folly. Once on a voyage I caught a cold and came home with a high fever. My wife was working at the time. She left me the baby and went to work herself. I was tossing between heaven and earth in the agony of high fever. I silently prayed to God not to torture me like this if He wanted to take my soul. At some point, I felt someone's touch on my face. It was my 3-year-old daughter. I thought she was playing dolls in her room, but she that day did not move a step away from me, but only stroked my face and looked sadly at my suffering. Since that day, my attitude towards her has changed, and my daughter was waiting for it. I come home from work, she runs to meet me. I lie on the couch, she brings me a pillow, she fixes my blanket. A little later, she started to cook for me with her little hands. I was amazed at how devotedly she took care of me. So after a while, we became friends with my daughter. But I was stupid enough to keep talking in front of her about how it would be better with a boy. I didn't realize how painful it could be for her. When my daughter got a little older, she started showing interest in serious sports. My wife signed her up for wrestling. Now I was proud of her, and I should have been wary instead. By the time my daughter was 10, my wife and I were regularly called to school. Her teachers were complaining about her daughter beating up high school kids. I became even more proud of her. I thought she was growing up to be a strong girl. Later, my son was born, and I think I began to spend less time with my daughter. And that hurt her. To get my attention, she tried to play sports even harder and do even better in school. As far as I remember, she was always walking around with injuries and bruises, always sleep deprived. I never once saw my daughter in cute little girl dresses. I realized all this too late. My daughter just wanted to please me, so she gave up her feminine role. This later caused her death. By the time she graduated from high school, she had already achieved great success in wrestling. One evening, as usual, she said goodnight to her mother and me and went to her room. My wife and I also went to bed. The next morning I went to work. Everything was quiet in the house. Toward lunchtime, my wife called me and hysterically informed me that our daughter was in the morgue. At this point, John's voice became quiet and tears welled up in his eyes. "So what happened to her?" Tom asked. My daughter had a close friend, Georgia, her complete opposite. I didn't like her, but we didn't oppose their friendship much. That night, Georgia went somewhere to a party where there were some guys she didn't know. After drinking some alcohol, the guys started hitting on my daughter's friend. She tried to get out of their hands on her own, but she couldn't. Then she found an opportunity and called my daughter. Jenny didn't bother to wake us up. She opened the door with her key and went to rescue her friend in the night. Of course, she put all the boys on her back there and rescued her friend. But the boys were not easy. They called their friends for help and caught up with the 2 girls somewhere along the way. This Georgia managed to somehow escape and hide in the woods, and my guinea struggled with them until one of them pulled out a knife. Her bloody body was left right beside the road. Georgia was afraid that her parents would reprimand her for such adventures and kept silent about the incident. My daughter's body was found by passersby and turned over to law enforcement. And just like that, she was gone. 3 days before her 19th birthday. After she was buried, I began to remember every day she appeared in my life. I realized that the most responsible periods of her life, as a father, I was absolutely indifferent to her. Then I traumatized her with my dreams of having a boy. When the boy was born, I turned my attention to him. So my daughter's whole life has been devoted to pleasing me. You know, Tom, if I hadn't said those stupid things about the boy, maybe my daughter would have grown up like a normal girl and not been into man stuff. Maybe her frivolous friends wouldn't have used her as a protector. Then she wouldn't have dared to go to unknown boys at night and get into a fight with them. Do you realize that I'm guilty of you for my daughter and I don't know how to atone for it? If she were alive right now, I would apologize to her every day and dedicate to her all the fatherly love that I used to just ignore in myself. And yes, that pendant I bought her was my only gift to her. It was only after her death that I realized that that pendant was very precious to her. Telling the story, John could not hold back his tears. Tom listened in silence and could not find words to comfort his friend. 2 months passed. Tom and John are coming back again from a long trip on the same route. Tom, don't forget to stop at Leslie's. We'll stop by Angela's. I'm worried about her, John said. Whatever you say, I'm all for it, said Tom, remembering the hot embrace of the beautiful Elizabeth from the roadside motel. After lunch at Leslie's, John hurried to the motel. A stern-looking woman met him on the doorstep as always. There are experienced girls, but there are also newcomers. Which one do you want? She asked from the doorstep. I like Angela. I've already crossed paths with her here, John said, embarrassed. Angela can't. She's still on sick leave, said the stern woman. What happened to her? John asked. Nothing much. She was walking along the road, slipped and fell. She'll lie down for a couple of days and come to her senses, said the stern woman. Could I visit her after all? John insisted. No, you can't. If you doubt that the other girls will be worse, you're wrong. They're all trained. The woman wasn't about to give up. We need to step back for 5 minutes, John said and pulled Tom to the side. I have a bad feeling about this. Help me find out the truth about Angela. We're going to go in now and look in all the rooms. I think it's time for her to leave this place, John said to his partner. John, I thought you were kidding. I understand your emotions about your daughter, but understand, this is a different girl, especially since she's made her own life choices. Your attempts to do good can only end badly. Let's just take a man's vacation and get out of here, Tom said. Well, if you don't want to help, then I'll take care of it myself, John said and turned back to the stern woman. Can I see all the girls? John asked. You even have to. They are already waiting for you, said the stern woman and led the way inside the old house. In the cramped living room, several girls were lined up in a row. Angela was not among them. It seemed that the woman was right. Something had happened to her. John immediately recognized Elizabeth, Angela's friend, and chose her. Left alone with her, John asked her not to undress, to which Elizabeth was genuinely surprised. I'm just chatting. My friend and I have been out of the house for a month. We missed the warm companionship. You just keep me company for an hour, John said. No problem at all. I don't mind just lying around, Elizabeth said happily. You must be hard at work here, don't you think? John asked. No, they don't make me carry bricks. True, there are some inadequate clients, but in this case we have security guards, and so everything is fine, said Elizabeth and smoked. Where is your friend Angela? You mean Angelica? She's such an idiot that she's always getting herself into trouble with her long tongue. She was trying to prove something to our mom. And they don't like that kind of people here. They have strict rules. If you don't obey, they have every right to punish you. So Angela got her punishment. Now she's lying there licking her wounds. What do you mean, licking her wounds? Do you get beaten up here? Think about it. If there are rules, you have to respect them. That's the way it is even in the thieving world, right? And this is a decent place. There should be rules. If someone is against it, then it is right to punish him, replied Elizabeth. Where is Angela lying now? I have no right to say that to the customers. For that I can get myself punished. But I like you. If you need to know, we can make a deal, Elizabeth said. John immediately realized what the girl was implying. He took out his wallet, opened it and took out a large bill. But Elizabeth quickly walked over, took the bill and hid it somewhere in the depths of her cleavage. Angela was taken somewhere, most likely to Alad's house. She hides all the girls in her basement after punishment. Elizabeth began to reveal the inner workings of the house. Is Ala your mom? John asked, nodding toward the stern woman. Yes, that's her. But she's not to be trifled with. She's got a lot of connections. She gets away with everything. So don't even try to look for her house, Elizabeth said. Have you ever received such punishments yourself? How could I? I grew up on them. If it hadn't been for those firm hands, would I be the person I am now? Elizabeth said proudly. Were you also beaten and kept in Allah's basement? The rules are the same for everyone. But why are you asking me all this? It won't help. John took out his wallet, pulled out a second large bill and slipped it to the girl. I think you can remember the address of Allah's house now, and I'll write it down. And if you don't want to, I'll complain to your mom that you didn't please me well, he said, turning everything into a joke. You're pushy. You'll make trouble if you go looking for Angela. Allah will quickly find out what I leaked, and then I'll end up back in the basement. I don't want that. I need to make money, Elizabeth said. And I will make sure that your mom will not know anything. I can confirm my words with a decent reward, said John and took out a third bill from his wallet. She silently took it and happily hid it in the depths of her cleavage. She then proceeded to leak the pimp's secrets. All their lives in the city, it's about an hour's drive from here. Get out a pen and write down how to find her house approximately. It turned out that Elizabeth knew Allah's address only visually. She had a hard time describing that her house was somewhere near a sporting goods store between the school and the hospital. John realized that the task ahead was daunting, but he wasn't going to back down. After John learned some details from Elizabeth, a plan to save Angela matured in his mind. Apparently, he and Tom wouldn't be able to solve this problem on the way. So they rented a room near the motel and spent the night here to put their plan into action the next day. Tom, I found out where Angela is. Today we'll go to free her from there. Without your help, John said to his partner. You've got yourself a gamble, John. Where are we going? How can I help you? The man was puzzled. All you have to do is stand by my side and agree with me. Now we're going back to Mommy's, and we're going to buy another Elizabeth for 4 hours. You need to tell her you want to make a gift for your friends. I'll wait outside. You go out with Elizabeth, John said. Tom agreed to John's suggestion without much enthusiasm. After lunch, they returned to the motel. Elizabeth turned out to be free. The guys paid for 4 hours and under the pretext of making a present for a friend took her out. When Elizabeth saw John on the street, she immediately began to resent him. I know what you're involving me in. It's dangerous for us. And if you're talking about Angela again, I'll come back and tell my mom, Elizabeth threatened. You don't have to do anything this time. You'll do your usual job, but somewhere in the field. No one will know you helped us, John said. Just to be safe, he had to pull out another bill and put it in Elizabeth's cleavage. Elizabeth took the money, put it in her pocket, and all her indignation vanished. If you insist, let's get going, she said. They left their truck under guard and took a cab. On the way, John had to ask for the address of Allah's house. With great patience and effort, he managed to get Elizabeth to lead them there herself. Here we are. Allah lives in that big house over there. Elizabeth pointed toward the new mansion, which stood out brightly against the background of the modest old houses. Wait for me outside, John said and reached for his gym bag. From the bag, he pulled out a sanitation worker's uniform and quickly changed in the car. I'm going to go tell the guard I need to fix something in the house. Elizabeth, it's up to you, John said and whispered something in her ear. Elizabeth nodded her head and smiled wryly. The guard was a young and carefree guy. Besides, he had recently gotten the job and didn't know that Elizabeth had stayed in the basement of the house under the guard's supervision many times before. When John told the guard that the landlady had called him in to make repairs to the house, he silently escorted him into the house. John pretended to inspect the plumbing. The guard quickly returned to his seat. By then, Elizabeth was standing by the booth, flashing her seductive charms. Young man, I came here to my friend, and she is not at home. You have to wait until the evening. I am very tired. Can I sit in your booth for half an hour to relax my legs a little? Said Elizabeth, stroking her slender and long legs, which her short skirt did not cover at all. Once inside the booth, she took off her stilettos and put them aside. Without waiting for the guard's permission, she lay down on his sleeping place. The guard's eyes widened at the beauty that peeked out from under the girl's tight dress. Elizabeth knew how to deal with timid men, so I began to procrastinate with my task. The guard did not even have time to believe in his happiness, as he found himself in the hot embrace of such a beauty. John followed the course of their actions from the window of the house. When he realized that the security guard was immersed in a more interesting process than watching the surroundings, he hurried down to the basement of the house. The door was open. The basement turned out to be quite a living space. Everything necessary for survival was here. It was noticeable that Allah had been in this business for a long time and had thought of everything in detail. Seeing John here, Angela couldn't believe her eyes. John came closer to her and saw that her situation was quite difficult. Can you stand up? John asked. I can, but it hurts a lot. I have bruises all over my body, said Angela. You should have run away with me that time. I'm afraid you'll be punished for it. Go away before it's too late. No, I'm not leaving without you this time. Come on, let's get up quietly and get out of here unnoticed. Your friend is the guard. The car is waiting outside. There's no time to argue, John said firmly and took Angela's hand to help her up. There were bruises and abrasions on the girl's face. There was nowhere to put a mark on her frail body from the huge bruises. John noticed all this while the girl was changing her clothes. What did you get so badly hurt for? John asked. I got an inadequate client. I didn't want to fulfill some of his desires. He complained to his mom. It's okay, I've had worse, said Angela. Before taking Angela out of the basement, John went back to the guard's booth one more time. Everything was fine there. Elizabeth was practicing her rewards well. The guard didn't notice Angela leaving Alice's house, accompanied by John. When Elizabeth finished her business, she thanked the guy for his hospitality and left. John's plan worked well. He put Angela in his truck, and now he's on his way home. Tom is asleep in the back seat. Angela sits silently next to him. Where are you taking me anyway? Did I ask you to save me? Suddenly she's the first to ask, breaking the silence. What's your real name? I think we have reason to have a serious talk with you. John asked the girl a counter question. Celine. That's a beautiful name. And where are we going? Selena asked. I think you'd be better off anywhere but that basement and motel. Don't try too hard. I've seen a lot of do-gooders like you. It's usually either to satisfy their ego or they have even more devious plans than our mom, Selena said. I don't have any devious plans for you. I'll help you with a place to live, a job for a while. If you want to, we'll try to get you an apprenticeship. That would be perfect, John said. And if I don't want to? Selena asked. Then you're stupid for now. If you live a normal life for a while, you'll change your mind. What don't I know about this normal life of yours? I think you're out of touch with reality. Look at the world. Money is everything. And to make money, any method is good. At least I don't cheat anyone. I bend honestly and get paid for it. What do your normal girls do? Sleep with men and quietly wait for them to do something to help them. He doesn't want to do anything. He's not used to sharing. The funny thing is, they're both unable to talk openly about their positions. I'm unlike them, and everything's fair and clear. You decide for yourself where normal life really is, Selena said. You're still young. When people are young, they tend to believe what sounds convincing. Besides, some life positions can be a losing proposition for your future, John said. They drove on in silence for a while until John saw a lonely old woman along the road. The old woman saw the truck and started waving from afar. Well, here's our companion. Let's take the old woman with us. She must be tired of waiting for a hitchhiker, said John and hit the brake. I see your middle name is Kindness. Don't complain later that no one appreciates it, Selena said wryly. I don't need appreciation. I've lived most of my life, and I've realized a few things. From small years we worked from morning till night, and it helped us a lot in our adult years. After such childhood and youth, nothing was scary. But they had kept a human face, and thank you for that. Grandma was not going to stop talking for a minute. John only nodded and watched Selena's reaction. It seemed that some of the grandmother's words were making her think. Grandmother's uninterrupted story lasted until a second man came along the road. It was a young boy. John pressed the brake. A seat was found for the new passenger. As soon as the guy sat down, the granny started telling all of her stories all over again. So they drove stealthily to town. Grandma and the boy got out of the truck right after entering the city. Tom is always sleeping soundly in the back seat. Again, there was an awkward silence between John and Selena. Before I came to pick you up, I arranged a place for you to stay. 2 small rooms, not luxurious, but no worse than a roadside inn. I'll leave you there now. You rest and regain your strength, John said. How much do you have to pay per month? Selena asked. I'll tell you after you get a job. I'm also talking to people I know about a job. They should be able to help. You don't have any education yet, so you'll have to take any offer you can get, John said. So I'll have to work for a penny from morning till night, then give it all to some strangers for a night's stay? It would seem so at first glance. But while you are plowing and giving money to other people, you should have other goals and desires. And then before you know it, normal life will take over and things will get rolling. While Selena was arguing with John, they found themselves in a neighborhood near the center of town. The long truck was having trouble fitting into the narrow alleys. It didn't take long to find it, so John put Selena outside the old wooden gate, handed her the key to the 2 empty rooms, and hurried home. When it was only a short distance from the house, John decided to stop at a store and buy some things to take home. He opened the glove compartment of the car and found it empty. John remembered several times that the day before he had put a wad of money in the glove compartment with his own hands. It was the money for his entire flight. Usually it was a fairly substantial sum, and this time his earnings had turned out to be even more. He was glad that with this amount of money his plans were accelerating. and now it turned out that it was as if he had been rolling around for nothing for a whole month. The first thought that went through his head did not like it very much. Did someone steal his money? Who could it be? Tom is out of the question. He and Tom are old friends and always go on long trips together. Or maybe it's a chatty grandmother, or a young boy. But none of them showed any signs of a suspicious person. John was very offended, and he immediately turned his truck to the police station. There he recounted the events of the last day as they happened. I think we have some leads. I wouldn't be surprised if by evening your money had been found, the police major said lastly. Please, I'll be very grateful to you. You can go home now. We will contact you with the results of the investigation, said the police major and escorted John out. He came home completely out of spirits. His wife Emma and son Tony met him on the doorstep. John was ashamed to come home without even a present, but when he told her that he had lost all his earnings, his wife did not reproach him for anything. However, for some reason John did not want to tell about his adventures with the girl Selena. His wife might misunderstand and suspect him of cheating. He postponed this conversation for later. A few days later, John returned to the house near which he had left Selena. He knocked on the door, but no one opened it, and when he pulled the handle, he found that the door was unlocked, and the inside of the house was empty. Selena was nowhere to be found. Where could she have gone in the city unfamiliar to her? As he pondered on his way back to his apartment, someone called him. Hello, it's the major. I'm calling about your lost money. You need to come to the department. We have a suspect, said the same officer who had taken his statement a few days ago. John arrived at the police station in a hurry. The police major received him in his office and informed him of the first results of the investigation. We detained a girl. You brought her with you from a neighboring region, placed her in a rented apartment. Is it really Selena? John asked. And why not? Members of this ancient profession tend to steal money and valuables from clients, said Major Christopher. What will happen to her now? John asked. She will be punished according to the law. She'll reflect on her actions in prison, and then she'll come out a normal person. Is there any way to avoid prison? Citizen, I don't understand you. If we treat all criminals leniently, how can we ensure order? The major was indignant. I think she didn't tell you the most important thing. Selena is my daughter, but she doesn't know it yet. I wanted to tell the truth later. I found her a while ago, and I didn't want to spook her, John said. Well, in this case, the responsibility before the law will not go anywhere. If you want her to go free, it's only through the courts now. And so she pleaded guilty right away. But we can't find the money. She's already spent it somewhere, said the major. John left the major's office at a complete loss. How could Selena do such a thing? On the other hand, what reason did he have to so blindly trust a girl who had recently sold her body for money? Somehow John didn't feel like thinking about his money. Now his thoughts were occupied with how to free Selena so she wouldn't end up in jail. John dialed Tom's number. Hi, you're rested, recovered, I hope. Hey, I'm fine. John, how are you doing? Any progress on the investigation? Tom asked. That's actually why I'm calling you. The major called me today and told me the thief was apprehended. The most unpleasant thing is that it turned out to be Selena. I wanted to tell you about it, but I didn't want to offend you. John, it's nice of you to be such a kind person, but on the other hand, think about it. This girl has a dark past. You may not be the first victim, and you may not be the last. I'm surprised at how you found an adventure out of nowhere and don't want to admit it, Tom said. Even if she did it, she must have had a good reason, or she did it foolishly. She told me along the way that she favored easy money. She made a mistake. We should give her a chance to correct it, John said. Oh, that's too much. What is she to you? Daughter? Wife? Lover or sister? John, wake up. You're just associating her with the image of your daughter, but she's not. All right, we'll deal with that later. Right now, I'm calling you about something else. Lend me some money. I'll pay you back on the next flight. Money's no problem, John. You can come to my house right now, said my friend Tom. In order not to cause a new storm of indignation, John did not say that he needed the money for his lawyer. In a couple of hours, Tom handed over the necessary amount, and John began to realize his future plans. Donald, hello. As promised, I've brought my daughter to work for you. Her name is Selena. She's a little cranky, but that's fixable, John said as he introduced her to his old friend. John, there's no problem. Washing dishes isn't like solving people's fates or doing math. You don't really need character, you just need a little restraint, Donald said. Donald owns a small cafe in the center of town. His place is very busy. The staff works practically non-stop. Initially, Donald suggested that John consider a waitress position. But John remembered that Selena can be unpredictable when working with people, chose for her the role of dishwasher. Of course, when Selena heard about it, was very indignant. You call that kindness? I can't imagine having to stand at the sink in a cafe and wash dishes. It's much better than going to jail for stealing, John said. Selena was silent, but only for a while. Each of them thought about recent events. Indeed, Selena had admitted that she had stolen a round sum of money from John's glove compartment. The police had proved it, but John had hired a lawyer and they had managed to frame the case as a reconciliation. John insisted to the law enforcers that Selena was his illegitimate daughter and that's why he didn't want her to go to jail. And when she came out, she told them why she was taking such a step. Turns out her reason was serious. We were graduating from high school and we had a graduation party coming up. By then, I already owed school fees. I also wanted to wear a beautiful dress and shoes like all the girls. But by that time I didn't even have normal everyday clothes, and even less money for clothes. So I went to my distant relatives to look for money to borrow. They introduced me to a woman who promised to help me. This woman needed a guarantee. As a guarantee, she asked for the documents from my parents' house and my documents. I gave them all. She gave me the right amount of money and set a deadline. When the deadline came, I had nothing to pay back. The woman said that I had to pay back the money. Otherwise, she'd take my parents' house and her tough guys would deal with me. That's when I started working at that motel. I was scared when you took me out of there. They might be looking for me. If they do, it won't be good. When I saw you had so much money, I thought I could give it to that woman and be free forever, Selena explained. You're just a child, that's why you're so stupid. Who would let people like you do something like that? It's illegal. They can't just take away your parents' house, and they can't do anything to you if you fight them with determination, John explained to her. Then he added, now, to avoid such unpleasant adventures in the future, you'll have to learn to live differently. Settle in at work. In the spring we will make you documents and you will prepare to enter the university. It won't be easy, but it will be the right thing to do, John added. Selena has been studying at the university for 2 years now. At first, she resisted her new life, often skipped classes and practically did not prepare for exams. Not everything was in order with her work. Donald often called John and complained that Selena was very conflicted and irresponsible. After these complaints, John would take time out of his day to visit Selena and talk to her about it. The conversations did not go well. Selena was shaped by the street. She adopted the laws of the street as a rule for her life. She'd missed something very important in her formation, but she didn't want to admit it. I live my life the way I want to live it. I didn't ask you for help at all. She was indignant when John came to visit. You're a silly little girl. You're giving up the most important part of your life for something you don't even know about. You'll hit rock bottom before you know it, and it'll take you a lifetime to get out. You will lag behind in the social race, miss all the favorable opportunities, but you have the potential to achieve something. And you're always choosing dubious adventures, John admonished. On one of his last visits, he added, Selena, there may never be another person to give you a helping hand in your life. You're not a child anymore, you're 21. Sit down sometime and think calmly. Do you want to achieve something in life, or is it enough to live today? You're lucky. You have time for all that, John said and walked away. For the week that followed, he thought about that conversation constantly. It seemed he was beginning to quietly hate himself for imposing his vision of life on this girl. The last time he had talked to her, he had gotten a little testy and even insulted her. After a week, he couldn't stand it anymore and went back to see how she was doing. He had to knock on the wooden gate for a long time. The lights in the house were on, but no one was in a hurry to open the door. He decided to wait here. After a while, the gate opened and John couldn't believe his eyes. Donald was coming out of Selena's house. She accompanied him in a light silk robe over her naked body. When they saw John, they were both dumbfounded. They clearly hadn't expected his visit. John realized at once what had happened. Donald, we're childhood friends. Selena is old enough to be your granddaughter. Why would you do such a thing? John asked. Donald felt extremely awkward. While he was choosing words in his head, Selena beat him to it. Why do you even care? He and I are both adults. We decide for ourselves what to do, what not to do, She pounced on John. Donald, I'm sorry you've stooped so low. Selena works for you and is not doing well. You found her weak spot and decided to exploit it. Honor doesn't do you any favors, John said to his comrade. Donald took John by the elbow and pulled him aside. I'm sorry, friend, I had no intention of going near her, but she started hanging all over me and won't give me a pass. In return, she wants me to overlook her absences and raise her salary. I couldn't fire her because you're my friend. That's why it's such a mess. But I don't deny my guilt, Donald said. John took Donald by the elbow, now back in the company of Selena, who was still standing outside the wicket. Donald, what are the prospects for your beautiful relationship with Selena? If there are any, it's appropriate to tell us about them right now. And if there are none, why should a young girl like Selena be with you? John asked and looked at both of them in turn. Donald understood the question, so he remained silent. But Selena showed her true colors here too. And what makes you think that every relationship should have prospects? We are adults. We have the right to act sometimes against all logic. I just don't understand why you care so much. Maybe you're just jealous. Maybe you've liked me from the beginning and you can't tell me. She couldn't stop the flow of words. As much as John tried to keep his emotions in check, he couldn't. He mumbled to himself, got into his car, and drove away. Selena felt victorious. Donald understood the true meaning of what was happening and sank into thought. At that moment, Selena hung around his neck and said, Kotick, don't mind him. He made up a fairy tale about me being his daughter. With that fairy tale of his, he's always getting under my feet. I'm tired of him myself. I don't know how to get rid of him. And you forget about him. We can work things out between us, right? Selena looked at the pot-bellied old man with hope in her eyes. Donald gently released himself from Selena's tight embrace and took a couple steps away. Then said, I have to be honest with you now. John's right. You should be thinking about your studies, not trading yourself for dubious liaisons, even if they benefit you. No offense, but I'm firing you. And try not to bother me with your calls, Donald said. Then he headed towards his car, which was parked around the corner. Selena had clearly not expected this turn of events. She was left completely bewildered and all the evening angry at Donald that he could not fight back against this John. Today, John was returning from another flight. He had been away for over 2 months and missed his wife and son Tony. He usually visits Selena before he leaves on each long-haul flight, leaving money or buying whatever he needs. She is still reluctant to get into John's words, but she likes getting regular help from him. John is sympathetic to this. All this time while he was on the voyage, John felt guilty that this time he didn't leave her any money for running expenses. Several times he had the urge to call her and ask her how things were going. But each time he stopped himself. What was the use of talking if they couldn't hear each other anyway? And material help is the only point of contact between them. John decided to visit her right after he got some rest from his flight. Now he bought a lot of goodies for his family and hurried home. He was met on the doorstep by his son Tony. John was surprised to find that Tony was already taller than his father and was growing up day by day. Son, I've missed you so much. And now Mom too. Where is she? He asked from the doorstep. Instead of answering, Tony's facial expression made it clear that his mother wasn't in the mood. John handed the shopping bags to his son, hid the bouquet he bought for his wife behind his back, and headed into the living room where Emma was sitting. She greeted him rather coolly. All of John's questions she ignored. After John had changed and showered, she said coldly, "Go to the kitchen. Dinner is waiting there." John had to eat dinner alone with his son. Emma did not sit down at the table, but did not explain the reasons. "Dad, why do you work as a trucker?" the son asked an unexpected question. "Why? I've always liked driving long distances, and you can earn good money. Why such questions?" John asked. I think your long trips badly affect your relationship with your mother," said Tony, as if hinting at the cause of resentment of the mother. "By the way, what happened to her? Did someone hurt her?" "Don't worry, you'll find out soon," Tony replied. After dinner, John cleaned up the table, washed the dishes, and sat on the sofa in front of the TV. Emma, who had been sitting in front of the TV before, quickly got up and went into the other room. John realized that he would have to act on his own. "Honey, what's wrong? You don't tell me anything, but I can see your resentment." He started the conversation. "You guess," said Emma. "Emma, why are you playing childish games? The resentment comes from you, so you better know why. It's not a good idea to play riddles. because we've been together long enough and we're old enough to hear each other. Who is she? Emma asked, looking at him with tear-filled eyes. That's not a good format for a conversation either. You should be more specific about who you're talking about, John said. You've got several of them. You're probably confused about them yourself, so you don't want to be further embarrassed. Emma started to cry. I don't think we're going to have a proper conversation. I was at least trying to solve the problem, John said and walked back into the living room. Emma began to wait for him to come back to reassure her. An hour passed. John remained in the living room as he sat in front of the TV. Emma was tired of crying alone. I'm not going to let this go, am I? She hissed and walked into the living room. She sat on the edge of the couch and finally found a way to voice her resentment. Leslie came by while you were gone. She told me a lot about you. Emma said and waited for her husband's reaction, but there was no reaction. Well, she saw you going to some girl near the center of town. She followed you and saw you dropping off bags of groceries, taking her somewhere and bringing her back. Leslie's a smart broad, so she figured it out. She went to check with the girl's neighbors. They said you're just one of the many suckers who go to her place. Have you stooped so low? And you promised me only last year that you would stop all these affairs, didn't you? Emma wailed. Why didn't your Leslie go to that girl and ask her all the details? What, you think she'd tell the truth? They'd be lying through their teeth. And Leslie didn't find herself on the street talking to people. You talked to her. Emma continued her monologue. If you really want to know the truth, I suggest you come with me to this girl. Maybe, as two women, you'll hear each other better than you hear me. You'll find out all the circumstances, John said. No way. I don't want to have to go around with you and listen to different girls, do I? You go to her yourself. You don't even have to come back. My son and I can do without you, Emma said, and began to rearrange the items on the living room table. John looked at her and realized that in some cases talking was useless. A person is either disposed to the truth or influenced by their own beliefs, and they don't think about whether those beliefs are true or not. John, I told you from the beginning, that girl wouldn't appreciate your concern. She's gotten a taste of street life and she's hooked on it, and you've been in trouble for the last 3 years because of her. Now it's getting to your wife. I know you're Emma, no offense, but you're gonna have a hard time explaining all this. Tom comforted John in the bar that night. I don't need no thanks from her. I just want Selena to open her eyes to her delusion and start living a normal, safe life. What if one of her men kills me or murders me? John, it's not up to you anymore. You've already done enough for her. Got her out of the brothel, restored her documents, got her a place to live, helped her get into university. How many jobs have you given her? Sometimes people close to you don't do as much as you've done. I haven't counted how much I've done for her, but I do know one thing for sure. I'd like to keep taking care of her. And you know why? Because I want to rehabilitate myself before God, before myself. I had a beautiful daughter. It took me a long time to realize what a treasure she was. Then she died when I started to take pride in her. It was too late that I latched onto my daughter with all my soul. She made me feel like a happy father. I recognized this great fatherly feeling for my own daughter. It's something completely different than we used to think. With women, it's clear. Their love for their children happens on a biological level. But with men, it's more complicated. I was able to feel this mysterious and strong love that only his daughter can give to a man. I realized that Selena is a complete stranger to me. Moreover, she is nothing like my daughter. Nevertheless, the girl's father is still alive in me. Why shouldn't another girl benefit from my pure fatherly love and care? I don't ask for anything in return, John said. You've gone too far in these matters, my friend. I don't even know how to comfort you. Maybe you and Emma should have another child. You're still old enough, said Tom. John's cell phone rang and his expression changed. Oh, it's Selena. You sit tight. I'll be right back, said John, took his phone and hurried outside. Uncle John, what's up? Selena sounded affectionate for the first time. I'm fine, how are you? What took you so long to call? I didn't want to bother you. Now I have a problem. I need your help. What's wrong? Did you do something wrong at work again? Or are you having trouble with your studies? Don't worry about the job. I'll find another one soon. There's nothing wrong with school either. But my neighbors are bad. They complained to the landlady, who came yesterday and demanded that I move out of her house. Where will I go? Selena cried. It's not a problem to find a new place to live in the city. You take a newspaper with ads, look for offers and call. If you realize that the housing suits you, you make an appointment and go to see. There's nothing complicated here. Why don't you talk to the landlady? Maybe she won't kick me out. I've always paid her money on time. Maybe she'll let her neighbors take care of it for me. Don't jump to conclusions. I'll come to you tomorrow and we'll discuss everything. Bye-bye, John said and hung up the phone. Just as he was about to return to Tom's company, he received a second call on his phone. John, this is Alice, the owner of the house you rented for your daughter. We need to have a serious talk with you, Alice said in a disgruntled tone. Hello, Alice. I'm listening to you, John replied. The fact is that your daughter is leading a completely indecent life. My neighbors have tolerated it for years. You know that they are very intelligent people and it is unbearable for them. I'm sick of listening to their complaints too. They say that every night different men come to your daughter's house, drink alcoholic beverages in my house, then make noise either outside or inside the house. I will not tolerate such disorder. Therefore, I ask you to take your daughter out of my house and give me the keys in a week, said Alice. Okay, I'm sorry for my daughter's outrageous behavior. You will get the keys at the agreed time, John said. Hanging up the phone, he decided not to delay his visit to Selena. With all the fuss about her, there was probably something to think about. John went back to the bar, paid for his check, then hurriedly left Tom's. When he arrived at Selena's house, he had to stand at the wooden gate for a long time again. Inside the house, lights were on and loud music was playing, which meant Selena was home. When John got tired of knocking, he climbed over the fence and walked straight into the house. Inside the house, he found an oil painting, a mountain of empty dishes on the table, a mountain of empty bottles under the table. Selena is performing some obscurantist dance surrounded by 3 drunken men. When he saw the unexpected guest, none of them was particularly surprised. Selena immediately remembered that this time she needed John's help. Guys, my dad's here. Are you going to meet him or go home? She asked and laughed in their faces. The men dressed quickly and hurried to the exit, trying not to look John in the face. What's your connection to these types? John asked. They're just friends of mine. I'm under so much stress, with all this studying and these problematic bosses at work. If you don't give yourself a chance to relax, you can go crazy. So it was a necessity, nothing personal, Selena said, playing the innocent sheep. It wasn't long before John noticed that one of the men had managed to slip Selena some bills just before they left. She had nowhere to hide them. At home, she often wore a silk robe over her naked body. I know you're still prostituting yourself. The whole neighborhood and even the landlady knows about it. She asked me to vacate the house. The only reason she's unhappy is because of your disgusting lifestyle. I'm sorry, but I don't know how to get through to you anymore. Doesn't studying engage you? Doesn't work motivate you to do better? Why do you keep getting dragged down? I can't understand it anymore. If you want to stay a sellout, stay a sellout. I think you're old enough to deal with the consequences of your choices, so you'll have to deal with the moving out issue on your own, John said finally and left. Selena was left completely bewildered. It had been almost 2 years since John had last seen Selena. He had promised not to interfere in her life anymore. He had kept his word. Now he expresses his longing for his daughter and his paternal feelings directly by regularly visiting her grave. He doesn't tell his wife about it. Let her think that John has long forgotten about his dead daughter and lives his own life. Today, as usual, John spent a lot of time at his daughter's grave. He told her the latest events in his life. In between, he remembers things from her childhood and tells her. At the end of each story, he cries and repents to his daughter for not loving her enough when she was alive. I've had enough for today, my little girl. Perhaps I have bored you already. Sleep well, I will be back very soon. John said goodbye to his daughter's grave and walked down the narrow path that leads to the main road of the cemetery. Suddenly, he heard a whisper not far from him. He looked around, but saw no one. He slowed his steps. After a couple moments, he heard the quiet sobbing again. Then he walked in the direction of that sound. Literally 3 graves away, he saw an abandoned, unkept grave without a monument. The hill was almost level with the ground. The fence is broken on one side, and on the edge sits a small, thin girl with disheveled hair. The girl was frightened when she saw the stranger, but she didn't run away. Are you here alone? John asked with surprise. Yes, alone. But now I will leave. You must be the guard. Don't chase me away. I'm going now, the girl begged. Then she put her thin hands on the disappearing hill of the grave and said, Mommy, I must go now. Don't you miss me. I'll come again soon, said the girl and hurried off somewhere. John followed her. The girl seemed to be frightened. John tried to make her feel at ease. Wait, don't be afraid of me. I'm not a watchman. What's your name? Jeannie. Jeannie, my name is Uncle John. Is your mom lying here? Yeah, she died 4 years ago. She was all I had. Who are you living with now? My mom's friends put me in an orphanage, but I was very bad there. So I ran away, Jenny said. Where do you live now and who do you live with? A grandmother took me to her house and I helped her with the household chores. But 6 months ago, she died too. Now her son came home with his children and they kicked me out. Now I sleep at night at the bus station and work part-time at the market during the day. If it gets cold, I don't know where to go. How old are you? 14. John was horrified because Jenny looked about 10 years old. Because of her ordeal and hardships, she was even physically stunted. After talking to her for a while, John realized that there was nothing wrong with the girl's psyche. She has not lost the purity of her world and believes that she can take care of herself. John was shocked by her words. Jeannie? My daughter's name was Jeannie, just Jeannie. She lies not far from your mom. I really want to have a daughter again. Do you want parents of your own? John asked. Yes, I would like to. But it's impossible. Jenny stared at John with her innocent childish eyes. But it's possible to try. Wait, you don't go, John said and pulled out his cell phone. He stepped aside and spoke to his wife. I know that our shared grief at the loss of our daughter still lies in our lives in the background. Let me take this girl in with me. She has absolutely no one. Maybe you could try to give her some love, too. And then suddenly the heart wounds of each of us will be healed and life will take on new colors. John was almost begging his wife. Bring her, at least we'll try. What else can we do? Replied Emma. Thus, John and Emma suddenly had an adopted daughter. Tony was a little perplexed at first, since he had to share his parents' attention with some strange girl. But a couple of educational conversations with her father removed all his doubts. After a few months, the role of big brother he really liked. Jenny turned out to be a girl with an open heart and a lively mind. It was hard to watch without tears at her joy when Emma made arrangements with the school and informed her foster daughter. When John returned from his flights and asked what to buy his daughter, she always asked for different books. Now after each flight, John came home with stacks of different interesting books. Jenny quickly caught up with her peers in terms of knowledge, and her physical development accelerated. She grew taller, put on weight, had a pink blush on her face, and became a real sunshine in the life of her new parents. Unable to withstand her emotions, Selima took out a cigarette and smoked. Her hands were shaking with anger, and it seemed that her head was about to split apart. As luck would have it, her friend Ekaterina wasn't picking up the phone. She angrily threw the phone on the kitchen table and went to the window. A few minutes later, Katerina herself called back. Well, friend, how did it go? She asked. Yes, it sucked. Such a bore I've never met before. I don't understand what's wrong. I've been out of the body trade for a long time. I have a college degree and some work experience. I honestly said amen. I dedicate all my beauty to you, and you are responsible for me, all honestly and without deceit. What's wrong with that? Selena was indignant. They were raised by their mothers. They never had a model of male behavior in front of their eyes. A real man, what kind of man is he? He doesn't bat an eye when a girl wants something. So forget it and move on to the next guy, her friend said. I forgot to tell you. Did you know that Michael came to see me yesterday? Is that your ex-boyfriend? Yeah, imagine that. He came over and he said he wanted to be with me. He wanted to talk to me, to get through to me. I said, you buy me a new chain or purse and the shoes I'm gonna show you. Then we'll talk about it. He took offense and left. What did you want? He was clear from the start. I told you how many times he's a useless bore. Don't waste your time on him. He doesn't appreciate you. We'll find for you another worthy. Then all will sing differently, encouraged friend Catherine. Hedusha, I can't stay with you long. Even should come for me. I'm trying to get something out of him. At least he is the most normal. I'll call you tomorrow morning, Selena said and hung up. Even didn't wait long. He'd arrived even a little earlier than planned. As he had promised earlier, he took Selena to one of the best restaurants in the city. Their relationship is now in its 4th month. Even works in a solid company, earns good money, and lives separately from his parents. Selena likes everything about him, except that he seems stingy and money matters. Today, she decided to talk about it. Evan, do you love me? Selena started the conversation from a distance. Do you have any doubts? I only build relationships for love, Ivan answered. And do you think love implies taking care of the person you love? Of course it does. Then I think tomorrow you and I will go shopping. I've seen something for me. I'd be happy if you bought it, Selena said. I knew it would be about that. Buying is not a problem, but I'm worried about something else. You got your degree, you have a college degree. Why don't you want to work for yourself? Ivan asked. I don't think a woman should have to kill herself at work. We are created weak. We are not adapted to difficulties. And a man should recognize that and take responsibility for a woman if he loves her, Selena said. Listen, darling, you have your brains, you have your potential. But ever since you started listening to different coaches and trainers for women, it's like you forgot about your true personality. Work isn't just about the money. I want you to put your knowledge into practice, have your own goals, develop and grow as a person. It's very important nowadays. If a person doesn't grow, he is not standing still, he is going downhill, Ivan said. I'm already developed enough. When I was young, I've seen and suffered everything. And now that I'm an adult, I just want to live comfortably for myself. I love myself and allow myself the best, Selena said. After that dinner, Ivan was seriously thinking about his relationship with this girl. He gets the impression that they talk about the same things but don't hear each other. Ivan has achieved something in his life and does not intend to stop there. He has some experience in relationships, and he understands that if his woman does not develop on a par with him, then very soon he will lose interest in her and they will cease to understand each other. At the beginning of their relationship, he saw some potential in Selena. She has an inner core, she has character. But for some reason, she decided to put herself in a narrow frame and live with easy goals like buying brands and a flashy lifestyle. Ivan understands that it's always on trend, but he knows this life from the inside. All this glitz and luxury can be a byproduct of hard work and growth, not the ultimate goal of those people. He's been trying to get this idea across to Selena for a long time, but she's becoming more and more entrenched in her vision. After that evening, Ivan stopped contacting Selena. She herself called him several times, but he politely ended the conversation, citing business. Of course, a man can't say to his face that a relationship is over. He hoped Selena would figure it out on her own, but she found a way to meet him and make a huge scandal, called him abusive words and left in a way that left the worst impression of her. Unfortunately, this was not Selena's first such relationship to end this way. She is already completely desperate. When she was a student, she always comforted herself with the fact that soon the right prince would show up and her life would be easier. She hoped that someday these endless worries of independent life would end and she would be able to afford complete relaxation. But no one was going to provide her with such a life. The more she wanted from her men, the more they made her suffer. At such moments, she would like to return to her former profession. There everything was clear. You give me money, I'm yours for an hour or a night. And in this normal relationship, to which all people in the world are so eager, so many things are unclear. Selena realized that finally confused in everything and does not feel the desire to be in any relationship. Almost 10 years have passed. Jenny has grown up to be a real beauty and smart girl. She has recently finished her studies, made a career in sports, got a job offer in a prestigious company. On top of that, her young man Archie proposed to her in a romantic setting. John and Emma were very nervous before the wedding. Tony and his family helped his parents in every possible way to organize the wedding. There are only a few days left before the much-awaited wedding reception. John has recently retired and is enjoying a well-deserved vacation. He now has plenty of time to devote to his family and his loved ones. Recently, he and Emma have been in the habit of taking a walk in the evenings at the stadium near their home. Today, they also went for a walk. It's always crowded. Someone is running. Someone is working out on the exercise machines. A lot of young people playing their favorite games. Young mothers with strollers walk along the curb. John and Emma were discussing the details of their upcoming wedding. They were so engrossed in their conversation that John didn't immediately hear someone calling him. Uncle John. A woman's voice kept calling him. John turned his head and saw a very familiar face not far from him. A young woman was heading toward him. Hi, Uncle John. Did you recognize me? The young woman asked. Selena, I recognize you, but with great difficulty. I certainly didn't expect to see you today, said John. And this, if I understand correctly, is your wife, Aunt Emma? Selena asked. Then she turned to Uncle John's wife. Hello, Emma. My name is Selena. Uncle John has helped me a lot in his time. I know you've even had your differences because of me. I'd like to apologize for everything. In fact, Uncle John tried to surround me with fatherly love, only I couldn't fit in as his daughter. I didn't realize all that until much later," Salima said in agreement. Emma had already forgotten all the arguments and conversations. But the words that John was looking for an object for his fatherly love had convinced her. At one time, she had not expected Jenny to come into their lives. Even in the first days of Jeannie's life in their family, Emma doubted whether she could love and accept a stranger's child. But when she saw the sincere love John had for her and how this girl was a good influence on him, she was able to accept her. Since then, their lives had changed dramatically. They both felt completely different people. Familiar, friends and relatives at first were wary. Later, when they saw the family idyll, they complimented and admired them. After these events, Emma for the first time looked at her husband with different eyes. And after all, deep down he also turned out to be a delicate and sensitive man. Now she willingly believed the girl's words without the slightest doubt. "Well, since you had a common history and fate has brought your paths together again, I suggest right now to move somewhere decent. Salima, you can tell us all about it over dinner." "John, how do you feel about this?" Emma asked. John, who until now had been waiting for his wife's reaction with great apprehension, was instantly pleased. "I'm all for it. To be honest, I'm still worried about Selena. I'd like to know how your future life has turned out. What has happened over the years?" "Emma and I have something to tell you too," John said, barely concealing his joy at the unexpected meeting. Sitting down to dinner, Emma asked Selena many questions. "Selena, how did you and John meet?" she asked. Selena thought for a moment. John immediately remembered the circumstances of their acquaintance and decided to answer for her. "She worked at a roadside cafe. I once witnessed how the owner of the cafe treated her badly. She refused to pay her employees' wages and loaded them with extra work." "Yes, that's what happened," nodded Selena, blushing slightly in shame for those times. "But then I went over to her and saw the same pendant around her neck that our Jenny had. Remember, I gave it to her for her birthday, and she wore it around her neck. So I remembered my daughter, and I decided to help her. I brought her to town and got her a job. At first, I went to her place to buy groceries and left some money. But Selena did well. Soon she got used to her new life. She had time to work and study. When I was sure that she wouldn't go to waste, I blessed her with an adult life and didn't visit her anymore," John said. "Uncle John, you could have introduced me to Aunt Emma right away, so there would be no disagreement later," Selena said. "I told her so, and she approved of my decision at the time. It's just that we were going through a stressful period at the time and couldn't invite you home. Wasn't it like that all the time?" John now turned to his wife. Emma looked at her husband with a disgruntled look for lying a bit in this story. But looking at Selena, she had no doubts about the truth of her words. "And what do you do now?" Emma asked the girl. "I am an economist by education. I work in a private company as a chief accountant. Recently, I bought an apartment. But my personal life did not work out, and I don't want to," said Selena. "What do you mean you don't want to?" "It's probably a particular man behaved unworthily with you, and you decided to take offense at all the men in the world. I'm sure you'll find the right man. God willing, we'll have a good time at your wedding, won't we, John?" Emma said from the bottom of her heart. "Yes, and we'll ask the groom for a decent ransom," John said. As their dinner together drew to a close, Emma said the big words. "I look at you and I keep thinking, if Jenny were alive, she'd be in her prime now, just like you. I look at you and I don't want to let you go. Why don't you come to our daughter's wedding as her big sister? You can meet her," Emma said. Selena had obviously not expected such warmth of heart from Emma. She even got a little teary-eyed. "I'll be there. I'll definitely be there," she said goodbye. Then they went home. On the way, Emma thought back to the time when her friend Leslie had told her about John's meetings with this girl. It turned out that all that speculation was nonsense. Now in their relationship with her husband is in order, and during this time Emma herself has become much wiser. Despite the decent distance, Selena decided to walk that evening in the night city. It had been so long since she'd been out for a walk. She thought back to those distant days and silently grimaced to herself. Indeed, many girls who take the path of trading with their bodies end up very badly. Either they are killed or they fall to the bottom of the pile irretrievably. It was a miracle that she had met such a kind man as John. Years later, she remembered his every instruction and was convinced that he was right, especially about men. You have to be strong and independent. Only then will a man want to reckon with you. And if you are needy of him, of his financial or moral protection, of his guardianship, he will not value you. So you must study and make a good career. That's what Uncle John always said. At the time, Selena thought these words were senile moralizing. But over these past 10 years, she had dozens of men who'd given her exactly nothing. On the contrary, many of them left her life, taking away some of her youth and energy. Only after making a lot of mistakes, she began to think and search for the truth. This day she was ready for a new approach to her life. While she was walking with such thoughts, a young man caught up with her. He said he saw her from afar and followed her. The young man appeared to be very sociable. He insisted that Selena let him walk beside her to her house. The young man introduced himself as Arnold. He works as a technician, has good looks, and an easygoing personality. Lastly, he got her phone number, promised to call her tomorrow morning, and wished her good night. Arnold did not lie. He did call early the next day. Selena was in a hurry to get to work at that moment. They managed to talk briefly, but Arnold was dissatisfied that she paid little attention to him. And then he said that he would call her in the evening and meet her after work. Selena lastly specified the time at which he was going to call. And when the promised time was approaching, she took her phone and put Arnold on her blacklist. There was a calmness in her soul, and as if she could breathe more freely. She walked home from work alone and was pleased with her progress. She realized for the first time today that she didn't like men who didn't respect her and didn't hear her words. Arnold was one of these. Now she was done with such men forever, Selena convinced herself. Before, she had been attracted to any man who showed interest in her. Only through many mistakes she learned to realize her supremacy in her life. The day of Archie and Ginny's wedding came. Everyone was happy on this day. Selena saw all the close relatives of the family for the first time. John personally introduced her to each of them. They accepted her as their own. The in-laws were introduced to Selena as Ginny's older sister. Ginny herself was immensely happy about the appearance of her new sister. The wedding was modest, but very cheerful and heartfelt. The guests sang songs and had fun all evening. When the celebration was in full swing, a handsome man approached Selena. "I assume you're on the bride's side?" he asked. "You could say that," Selena replied. "Archie's parents are good people, kind and kind-hearted. I think the young people will have a happy life. And he's a great guy too. I'm his maternal uncle and my name is Arthur." The man introduced himself. "I'm Selena, Ginny's actual sister. It's a long story, but in short, Uncle John and Aunt Emma are like parents to me now," Selena said. Arthur courted Selena very delicately all evening, and they chatted sweetly. It turned out he worked as a doctor. Before he had a family, but then his wife chose a different life and left him a young daughter. Selena was very surprised when she learned that a single father for 3 years has resigned to his fate and alone brings up his daughter. After the wedding, they decided to walk along the waterfront. They had a long conversation about life and their destinies. "To be honest, I put my personal life in second place. It is very important for me that my daughter grows up in a favorable environment. I was worried that my new girlfriend may not find a common language with my daughter," said Arthur. "And I think raising a girl is a big responsibility, but at the same time a very interesting task. I'd be curious to be part of the process," Selena said, and was momentarily embarrassed by her words. Of course, she was referring to an abstract situation or the birth of her daughter, and was not trying to be Arthur's friend or fiancé. "Selena, how do you feel about free relationships? We're adults, aren't we?" Arthur suddenly asked. "And how do you feel about it?" Selena posed a counter question. "I think that a relationship without commitment cannot last indefinitely. Sooner or later, one of the partners will get bored, and the other will have to start looking again. I prefer honest and open relationships," Arthur said. Selena felt a slight irritation at that moment. What's the matter with asking such serious questions on the first night of their acquaintance? And not to give a concrete answer yourself, that's not nice either. She suddenly felt a keen desire to be home sooner. Now she began to think about how she could quickly leave this company before Arthur asked for her phone number. But when it came to the phone, he turned into a slave man and still got her phone number. But Selena decided to teach him one last lesson. "Arthur, it's good that you mentioned honesty. So if you suddenly think of meeting me again, I'll tell you right away that I'm absolutely not set up for a serious relationship. It's not in my plans right now. Even if something works out, it will be a light variety of workdays for me. It's about the honesty you were just talking about, she said. Arthur was dumbfounded by her last remark. Another 6 months passed. Recently, Jenny had given her parents the happy news that they would soon become grandparents. Now the whole family intends to get together for a family celebration in the next few days, just waiting for Tony to return from his business trip. At this time, things were going differently for Selena. Honey, this is getting out of hand. It's not normal to spend time unknown where until so late and not even find a chance to answer my calls. It's outrageous. Don't do that again. Arthur was indignant into the phone. I warned you a month ago that I would be very busy these days, Selena replied calmly. I wonder what you are so busy with if you are on vacation. Arthur asked. What are people on vacation for? To rest, right? So I'm on vacation. Isn't that a good reason? Selena flirted. All right, this time it's goodbye. I'm still sitting in our restaurant waiting for you. You tell me, how long will it be? Or I can come and pick you up myself? Arthur said. You don't need to come, and you don't need to wait either. I spent the whole evening in the pool, and now I'm terribly sleepy. And you and I will talk tomorrow. No, the day after tomorrow. You just wait for my call. I'll call you, Selena said and hung up. Not even 5 minutes later, Arthur called her back. Actually, this evening was very important for me. I didn't choose our restaurant for this date for nothing. Have you forgotten that today is 6 months since we met? Arthur asked, barely hiding his offense. I remember, Arthur. By the way, I congratulate you on this date. If you remember, you're obliged to come right now. I was actually going to talk about something very important for us today, said Arthur, rubbing the velvet box in which the ring lay. What's so important again? Are you thinking of marrying me? Selena asked in a serious voice. What's the big deal? You and I are adults. We know each other well enough. I have serious feelings for you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Arthur almost shouted those words into the phone. Well, if that's true, then let's do it the old-fashioned way. You go to my parents, John and Emma, and ask them to marry you. If they like you, that's fine with me, Selena said. By doing so, Selena expected that she had made it difficult for Arthur, and now it was unlikely that he would want to repeat his romantic impulse. But tonight she had absolutely no desire to think about it. 2 days later in the early morning, Selena was awakened by a call on her phone. Selena, it's your Uncle John, came a cheerful voice. Good morning, Uncle John. How are you? Everything's fine. Selena, we have some questions for you. To be exact, a nice guy from a nice family is asking to marry you. We'd really like him. What do you think? You have to live with him. Let your word be the deciding factor, said Uncle John. Selena wasn't going to give a straight yes or no answer. As a result of her vast life experience, she had accumulated many different variations of joking answers to such cases. As a result, the next family gathering grew into another event, the wedding of Selena and Arthur. After the wedding, they lived happily and never had a reason for scandals. True, Arthur periodically resented that Selena is difficult to keep something at home. And after the birth of the child, he flew on wings of happiness from the fact that his wife finally attached to the house, and he is happy to take care of her.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.